There's not been one person in this world, in the history of this world, whatever, that has stood before God on their own merit and they were considered righteous. Not even one. So that theology doesn't work. So what do we bring, or what do we do with that? How do we wrestle through? God demands perfection, but we still feel like we can help. God demands not just good outweighs the bad. God demands no bad. Like zero. Which means as soon as you sin, or as soon as you lie, as soon as you steal, as soon as you covet, as soon as whatever it is, as soon as you do this, you're on trial for that thing. And then it just compounds and compounds and compounds and compounds. You know what it feels like when we actually sit with that reality? We start feeling stuck. If you're new, if you're joining for the first time, you're probably like, it's Christmas, why do they have a jail cell? Which is a very fair question. So we're in this series, it's called The Captive Liberator, because it's all about Jesus being a captive, but also a liberator of captives. So here's what every one of us knows. If we're in this room or if we're looking at this jail cell, every one of us knows what it feels like to be inside of a cell that you can't get out of. That could be a perfectionistic tendency that you desire. That could be some sort of sin that you've done or committed that you've carried with you. That could be like a smudge on your record. That could be a former life or a past life. It could be a former marriage or a former relationship, whatever it is that you've done. You know, right? I don't have to convince you. You know what it's like to live your life inside of a jail cell in which there is no escape. You know. Your mind might even be going to something right now. You're like, oh man, I'm thinking, yeah, it's that one thing. It's the thing that's a secret. It's the thing that's buried. It's the thing that's just attached to this deep level of shame and guilt, sadness, hopelessness. It's this thing that, like, if you really sit with it, you go, maybe I've never sat inside an actual jail cell before, but I know 100% what it feels like to be imprisoned. And what we do, this is so funny. If you build your theology on, well, I can earn something from God. I can try to earn a level of favor from him. Or maybe my bad stuff isn't just going to be held against me. Maybe he takes into consideration some of the good. That's like living inside of our cell and then cleaning it. It's like you grab your Swiffer wet jet or your broom or your vacuum and you straighten it up, you dust it, you put everything in order, you check all the boxes, you go to church, you're in a small group, you do all the right things. You go, surely this is going to contribute to God showing me favor. But in reality, the door's still closed, the cell still exists, and you're still stuck. Romans 3, verse 20, it says the same thing. Therefore, no one will be considered righteous because of the works of the law. Our decisions, our actions, what we were born into got us here, and we can't get out. We're stuck. So what do you do with that? I remember when I was in college, I had a lot of college stories. I got pulled over once, and this was really funny. I mean, it's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time. I was pulling out of a store that I was at. It was kind of later at night, and there was one of those signs that says no left turn. You've probably seen these before. I thought it was just a suggestion. It was like, we prefer that you don't turn left. And then I just turned, right, and then mostly left. And I pulled up to the intersection, and all of a sudden, I see a squad car come out of the shadows. I'm like, what the heck? Like, is this guy just sitting there waiting for people to turn left? And sure enough, he lights up the lights, and I pull over, and he walks up, and he removes all doubt. He goes, I'm sitting there to catch people that turn left. I went, shoot. So what do I start going into? I mean, the mode, if you've ever been pulled over, you probably go into this too. How do I get out of this? What name can I say, or what can I do to prove? It's like, my dad's the governor. Really? Not quite. So I start thinking, I pull out my registration, and after I go through like 4 of them that are all expired and out of date, I'm like, okay, registration, it's paid, it's current, it's valid. How about this proof of insurance? That's paid, it's current, it's valid. My seatbelt was on. Man, I had 10 and 2. I was driving well. My room's clean. It's like, there's nothing I can say to this police officer to let me off. There's nothing. He's literally sitting there to catch me doing what I did. And sure enough, he walked back and he goes, here's your ticket. I took that ticket. No good thing that I did got taken into consideration. The only thing that was on trial, the only thing that he cared about was the thing that I broke. The law that I broke, the sin I had committed, that was what was on trial. You know what? It was the exact same thing when I went to the court, because I fought it, right? Normal college kid. I'm like, I'll just beg for mercy. I showed up there, and I'll never forget the feeling. I sat on the left, the police officer sat on the right, the judge walked in, they shook hands. I went, this isn't good for me. And the judge goes, okay, police officer, go ahead and tell me what happened. And so he walks through the story, and then he looks at me and he goes, David, do you have anything to say for yourself? I'll never forget that helpless feeling of I'm busted. I'm stuck. I'm caught. The only thing that was on trial, you know what I didn't say? I brought a list here of everything that I've done right over the last year. How do you think that's going to go? I just owned it. That's all I did. I owned it. I stood before the judge and I said, everything you just accused me of, I did. The one thing he said I didn't see it, I actually did see it. I just made a willful decision to disobey the law, and I'm here to ask for a lighter penalty. That's what I said to the judge. We're going to live that someday. We're going to stand in a courtroom where there's going to be an accuser, and the accuser is going to say, here is all the things that they have done. Here's all the laws that they've broken, and not just the laws that we abide by. No, the laws that God created. Right, like the 10 Commandments and everything that follows from those. We're going to be held accountable. We're going to be sitting in a courtroom, and we are the ones that are going to be on trial. And God's going to look at us and say, do you have anything you'd like to say for yourself? That is not the time to go, I always paid my taxes, and I love people really well. I was in church every Sunday, and it doesn't matter. That's not what you're on trial for. What you're on trial for is the things that you have done wrong. Isaiah 53, verse 8, it says this, by oppression and judgment he was taken away. Now it's talking about Jesus. Yet who of his generation protested? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was punished. This verse, right, we've been tracking through Isaiah 53. It's saying Jesus was the one that stepped in and that intervened. Jesus was the one that was carted off, not because of anything he had done wrong, but because of all of the stuff that we were sitting there on trial for. That's why Jesus was taken away. And it wasn't just the people that were around him, it was us. It was stuff that we did. It was stuff that you did last night or last week, or last year, or last decade, or last season. It's all of the stuff. The accumulation of all of it was attached to him. And that's why Isaiah says he was taken away. So in this courtroom, if the judge looks at you and he says, what do you have to say for yourself? You got nothing. You've got absolutely nothing. Why? Because you can't behave your way out of grace, or into grace, I should say. You can't behave your way into it. You can't go, here's all the stuff I've done right. Here's my merit. Here's my pedigree. Here's everything that I've done. Now can I get grace? It doesn't work that way. You can't behave your way into grace at all. So why do we have this resistance then? I would say it that way. Why do we have a resistance to grace? The longer I sat with this sermon, the more I was like, I just feel like all of us have that. We may love to claim grace, but I think it's super hard for most of us to actually accept grace because of what we have to accept right before it. You know what we have to accept right before grace? Hopelessness, judgment, brokenness, beyond our repair. I think so many of us are opposed to receiving even the grace that Jesus wants to offer because right before we have to admit that we need it. That is super hard. I don't want to stand on this stage and pretend to you like that's not hard for me. It's extraordinarily hard. Man, I've got whole seasons marked by me resisting the thing that I just needed to own so that I could actually accept grace. In Ephesians 2, verse 8, it says this. For it is by, say this word with me, grace. It is by grace you have been saved. That saved word, again, implies you couldn't do it yourself. That you needed somebody. You ever been saved? Somebody that swooped in and rescued you. They did for you what you couldn't do for yourself. For it was by grace that we were saved. And then Paul continues, through faith. And it's not from yourselves. You didn't contribute. You didn't help. You didn't balance the scale, or you didn't bring in some good things. Nope. It was through faith, and this not from yourself. It is the gift of God. Merry Christmas for real. It's the gift that God gave you. You didn't earn that gift. You didn't pay for that gift. You didn't contribute. God gave it out of his heart, like we give gifts to each other from our heart, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. When grace enters the scene, it changes everything. It changes everything. Before grace, we're just condemned. Before grace, we'll stand in judgment. Before grace, hopelessness is a right feeling. Because there is no hope. You can't earn it. You can't fix it. You can't unlock your own cell. You can't do anything to get out of it. But grace, when grace enters the scene, it changes the entire tune. It changes the story. It rewrites possibilities. It actually allows for something to be healed or fixed or transformed, or something that's dead to be able to be brought back to life. Like grace is the comma where judgment is the period. When we say we're just done, there's nothing else I can do. There's nothing else I can add. There's nothing else. I can't undo what I've already done. Grace says I'm turning that period into a comma because there's a new story that's about to be written. Grace changes everything. That's why it talks about, like, for you are God's handiwork. Another version says you're his workmanship. God is at work. He's an artist. He is at work crafting and creating and writing and rewriting a story to end, not in death, not in destruction, not in judgment, but with life, with new hope, with new dreams. Like God's rewriting your story if you will allow grace to come in and actually change things inside of you. That's what he's doing. That's what he's inviting us today in 2022, in December. He's inviting us to actually step into grace, to receive it, not by works, not by something we did, not by how we contribute, just to receive a gift like a good father gives to his children. You know what we act like when we don't receive grace? When we feel like we can earn it? When we feel like we can contribute? Catch this. We eventually resent God, the local church, family members, spouses, friends, neighbors, etc., because we're never good enough. We never get it right. We never fix what was broken. We never undo the wrong. We can never bring wholeness and healing to the areas that we've contributed, that we broke, and it turns into resentment and frustration and anger and division, and it plays itself over and over and over, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper because we're trying to contribute to it, because we're trying to fix it. And the invitation that Jesus has for all of us today, tomorrow, is this. You can't fix it, but I can. I have this thing called grace. Do you want it? Will you take it? Will you receive it? You know, make no mistake, in God's economy or in God's judicial system, in God's courtroom, there is a scale. There absolutely is. Because the wrong must be righted. The sin must be undone or paid for. So in God's courtroom, right, in his judgment, as he's there, and as you're there, and as you're standing on trial here, you can stand on your own merit. You can. He gives you the option. He doesn't force you. You can say, I want to go in and I have a good list, Lord. I'm ready for it. You ready? Okay, so here's all the years I was in church. Here's all the things that I gave away. Here's all the people that I helped. Here's all the things. You can come in with your list, but that's not what you're on trial for. What you will be on trial for is all the things that you've done wrong that have created division and brokenness and sin. It's created enmity, brokenness, between you and God. That's what you're on trial for. So if you show up on your own merit, it's going to go like this, and you'll be judged. And it's like the bailiff comes in, and they grab you, and they cart you off. But there's another option. There's this thing called grace. And here's how it works in God's courtroom. He removes the scales. This is what grace actually looks like. You don't have to stand on your own merit. You don't. You just admit, I bring nothing to this equation. I bring nothing. There's nothing good that I can bring that can undo any of this. But the merit that I do want to stand on is the merit of Jesus, the one who did live a perfect life, who did live a sinless life, who didn't sin, who didn't create separation between God and him, who lived the absolute perfect life. I want to stand on his merit because Jesus offered us this gift, and it's called grace, and it's through faith in him that we can actually receive it. So that someday when we stand before God, we're going to stand right there, and God's going to say, do you have anything to say for yourself? And you're going to say, yep, Jesus. He took it. He paid it. I needed it. I brought nothing to the equation. I didn't contribute at all. In fact, I dug my own hole, and all I did my entire life was dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But it's by grace that I'm saved. It's through faith in him, through Jesus, the Son of the living God, the gift that we celebrate this Christmas. That is the gift that I want to stand on. You know what God says to that? Spend eternity with me. Because you're forgiven. Because you received grace. Hey, thanks for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope it made an impact on your life somehow. And if it did, don't forget to like or subscribe or share it on social media with your friends as well. We always love seeing you. And remember that you can join us live every single Sunday. So hope to see you there.